The Food and Drug Administration says it is planning to review its approval of a so-called yoga mat chemical that's been banned in Europe but can be a bread ingredient in the U.S. The agency previously approved it to whiten cereal flour and improve baking bread dough, but advocacy groups have raised concerns about its potential health risks. For more on this and other health news, let's bring in CBS News digital reporter Alex Tin. Alex, what are the concerns with this so-called yoga mat ingredient?
Yeah, so this ingredient, which is called ADA for short, I'm not going to try to pronounce the longer name because I did not do too well in chemistry when I was in college, but ADA was a bread ingredient that is used in the United States, essentially, as you said, to improve bread flour, sometimes used to improve cereal as well. There is some concern in other countries that when this ingredient is used in flour, it can break down into another chemical that for short is called SEM. I'm not going to try to pronounce the long name for that either, which might cause cancer. That's actually why Europe many, many years ago said that they would not allow the use of this chemical in bread in their country. In the United States, they have said that their studies, this is according to the FDA a few years ago, found that the amount of this chemical that was showing up in the food supply as a result of the baking process was too small, they thought, to actually cause a cancer risk. But as you said, we are now hearing from the FDA that they're planning on reopening their investigation into this chemical, as well as two others, BHA and BHT, which have also long been the focus of a lot of concern from advocacy groups, as well as some of Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s allies before he became the Secretary of Health and Human Services.
Alex, we said we were going to go through a lot of health headlines with you, so let's talk the current measles outbreak. The U.S. is already nearing 2019's total number of measles cases. We're just in the middle of May. What's the latest?
Yeah, that's right. You know, there's some good news here and there's some bad news. We'll start with the bad news. You know, the reality is this puts us only 250 cases away from topping the total number of cases reported for all of 2019. The reason that this worries public health experts so much is that people might recall that 2019 was the worst year of measles in U.S. history since the 1990s. That was before measles was eliminated, thanks in large part to vaccinations. So that's the bad news. The good news is there are some signs that this year's measles outbreak is now slowing. We have seen some decreases in the pace of new cases reported. That's even accounting for the reporting delays you often see during measles outbreaks. But of course, just to put a caveat on that, public health officials are still worried that some of those measles cases could continue to show up. Some of these outbreaks could get worse. And we are still only just now seeing what the potential impact might have been from that Easter travel we saw last month. Just a reminder, it can take 2 to 3 weeks for those measles cases to be diagnosed, to be reported to health authorities, and to show up in these figures.
Wow. President Trump is looking to tie drug prices in the U.S. to what is paid in other countries. And you recently learned why President Biden dropped his attempt to do the same thing. What did you find?
Yeah, that's right. You know, folks might remember that just earlier this week, President Trump said that he wanted to revive his so-called most favored nations policy, essentially trying to find a way to force drug makers to tie the prices they were charging here in the United States to the same prices that are being charged in other developed countries overseas, which are significantly lower. We heard that during the Biden administration, there were actually talks in Congress to do this exact same type of thing as part of the Inflation Reduction Act that gave Medicare the ability to negotiate drug prices. But that part of the proposal was dropped in Congress, we found out, because of concerns that Senate Democrat staff had that the moderates within their party, people like Senators Kyrsten Sinema of Arizona at the time, or Bob Menendez of New Jersey, that they would not be able to sign on to the bill if this clause was in it. So they instead changed to a different formula that's now what Medicare is using to negotiate drug prices. But to put it in a long story short, this is a proposal that has been floating around in D.C. for a long time, and we've often heard Democrats say that they wish it could have been in the law had they had a chance to do it again.
All right, Alex Tin, thank you.
Thank you.